So, Stephen D here on Pure 24/7 Radio, and I am joined by one of the writers for Pure Men's Mag. Hello, Barry Woodward.
Hello, Stephen. Good to be on again.
It's a pleasure to have you on and to talk about your article in Pure Men's Mag. But before we get into that, what is it you get up to?
I run a charity called Proclaim Trust that does a lot of work in prisons and communities throughout the UK. So we're based in Manchester, but we literally work all over the UK, specifically just the UK. We don't go abroad.
Cool. And you have some really interesting stories which you've been sharing in Pure Men's Mag. So, what inspired your most recent article talking about lessons from bumping into my ex, Lisa?
Well, stories pop up, don't they? And incidents happen. And Lisa, I'd spent 10 years of my life with when I was in the madness. She was an addict. I was an addict. We split up. We were living in Manchester. I ended up moving away, moving in with another woman. And then a few years after that, I had my epiphany. My faith journey started. And people were saying to me, Barry, you need to write a book. And I knew that one day I would. 10 years passed, and I had a conversation with Authentic Media. And it was a timely thing that the book, we're going to do a book, basically. So when you actually write a book, you have to have people's permission to use their names. So that's easy when they're local or the people that you're still in contact with. But when it's someone who was like years and years and years and years ago, like Lisa, then I went looking for her and I couldn't find her to get a permission to use a name. Anyway, I used the name anyway. I took a risk because I knew that if I saw her, she'd be sweet with it. And then flash forward 5 years, I bumped into her and I ended up going to her flat. So that's the setup for the article that I wrote. Yeah.
It's quite an interesting story to read. As soon as I saw that as a title, I was sort of gripped. I wanted to read more. What happens, sort of on tender hooks, as to what happens here.
So we ended up living on the outskirts of Manchester. We lived in Moss Side for years, which is a really, really notorious, still is today, area. And then we moved to the outskirts, to another not so quiet place, but compared to Moss Side, it was like the countryside. And I left her in a block of flats there and left with a bag of clothes, left my car. And then I went and moved in with this other woman. So by the time I was looking for her to get her permission, they'd knocked those flats down. So I couldn't find her. So I'm driving through that estate, which isn't too far from where I'm sat now. It's only 15 minutes away because I still drive through that estate a lot because our former office used to be right near it. We've moved since. So I'm driving through the bottom road. There was a top road and a bottom road. I'm driving through the bottom road and then I actually notice somebody walking on that side of the road. And I totally recognized the walk because she was small and she had like a distinctive walk. And I thought, that's Lisa. So I pulled my car up to the curb while my window down. Lise, she looked round. Is that you, Barry? Yeah, love. Oh, and she's like, oh, blankety blank, 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 blankety blank. I knew you'd come back. So she gets into the car. Do you want to come round to mine for a brew? So we go round the corner to where she'd now moved to in this little flat. And we go into her flat. She'd show me around. She was always house proud. She'd show me around. And we end up in her living room catching up with for many years and reminiscing for some of the things that we'd done. And she starts to make a spliff. And we're chatting away, chatting away, chatting away. In the middle of the conversation, she goes, do you want some? And obviously, no, I don't smoke weed anymore, Lise. What do you mean you don't smoke weed? No, don't smoke weed. I'm a Christian now. What? You a Christian? Yeah, 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 yeah. I've even wrote a book. I came looking for you to get permission to use your name because she said, oh, you did use my real name. I said, I did. I'll give you a copy before I go. So I goes downstairs, I lift up, lid of my boot, give her a copy book, driving away. And as I'm driving away, she shouts out, see you, Lisa. And she says, see you, Barry. You know where I am if you need me. So that's like an invitation from her. Because in the old days, if we ever had an argument, then I'd just move back in with a bag of clothes. We'd go to bed, maybe we'd take some drugs, and then that's it, back to square one. But when I think about that scenario, if I'd have said yes, so I'd been clean for years, I'd been off drugs for years. I've been set free. And my journey with God was good, still is, always been good. And I was on this missional endeavor. If I'd have said yes, nobody was there. She doesn't know any of my community because she's not on socials and stuff like that. She doesn't know. She knows what I'm doing now because she's read the book. But if I'd have said yes, and I think the lesson for me there is that we need to count the cost of the choices that we make, because if you don't, I mean, that could have been one yes and then another yes, and the next minute I'd have been back in the madness.
Yeah,
So
it's
a lesson from bumping into my ex.
it is it's a powerful lesson. It's one we all it's important for everyone, that realization that there are choices that we come across each and every day, and we need to make good choices. And every now and then there will come a choice, a moment where it'll be this could go one of two ways. It's kind of like a sliding doors moment. It could have gone either way, and it's really important we make those good choices. You asked the question at the end of the article, how we go about making those good choices, and it's an important thing to then think. So you're in this situation, you made the right choice. How did you come to making that right choice in that moment?
I think because my journey, my relationship with God is totally strong. And obviously, I'm in different scenarios. I go into prisons, I'm meeting people, I'm chatting with people, I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things. I'm in spaces with places with people who are, a lot of them are professional criminals. Some of them have just crossed the line, but some of them are very smart, savvy people. So I'm in scenarios similar to that quite a lot. But I've become strong, and it's like you need to think before you act. Because back in the day before my faith journey started, I didn't. That's how I ended up becoming a heroin addict. I was in Jackie Marshall's bedroom with some of my mates on a Friday night. One of the lads comes in with some heroin, who wants some, and I was the last one in that room. And they were going, "Come on, Woody, it's your turn." And I didn't want to be the only one not to try it. And I tried it because I didn't think about that choice. So now I'm mature enough to actually think before I act. Sometimes it's not that you don't get the time to think, but I think now I've got like a mechanism where I naturally think before I act.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't always get it right. I'm not perfect. When it comes to decisions like that, saying yes to weed, which is something I've got cannabis leaves tattooed on my arms, man. So it was a second nature thing for me back in the day. Every day, all day, I was smoking weed. So for me to say to her no, she was like, "What do you mean no?" I says, "No, I don't even smoke roll-ups or signal." "What, you don't smoke?" Because all we'd ever known was a life of madness, taking drugs all day, every day. So for her, that was a massive thing. "What do you mean? Barry Woodward doesn't take drugs anymore. He used to deal drugs." But for me, coming out of there, it was like, wow, how much have I changed?
Yeah.
Because I've been empowered to do that because of what God's done for me.
That's really cool. It's so important that we make those right choices. And in order to do that,
Yeah.
as you say, you need to be strong. You need to be in that place where you're able to think before you make a decision. And sometimes it could be a difficult decision to make to do the right thing. Other times it might be not in the case of not wanting to be the last one. It's so very easy to feel that temptation, that peer pressure, even to make
Peer
choices
pressure.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely to
Peer
make.
pressure is massive. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have
So,
to think about what it is that you're doing, as you say, think before you act, and getting to that place where you're strong enough is super important. So even when we've got easier decisions, it's kind of good to think then, how am I going to handle this so that I'm ready to handle slightly harder ones, I guess.
yeah. I think there's a phrase there, strong enough to say no enough. I think if we're strong enough, we can say no enough to things that might cause us harm, to things that might take us back, to things that are not. I think about choices now, and if it's going to help rebuild my future better, whether it's to do with me on my own faith journey or to do with the work that I'm involved with regarding Proclaim Trust, if it's a decision that's going to build something better, then I'll say yeah. But if it's a question mark, or if I have to take that, you know, so choices are everywhere, aren't they?
They are. So it's been really interesting chatting, hearing this story and kind of unpacking something really profound from it. If before we end, if there was one thing you wanted people to take away from this article, from this story, what would that be?
I think it's just count the cost of the choices that you make, because the choices that we make can make us or break us.
Yeah.
And
There's
it can sound like a cliche, and sometimes it is, but that's the reality of it. If we're thinking about the choices that we're making, sometimes we're just making choices. You know, we buy something from Amazon, we just cheat, you know that. But there's choices and choices, but those big choices that can make or break you, we need to think about them.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that to us here in the magazine and here on the radio as well, for bringing this important bit of thinking really about how we make choices, why we make choices, and making sure that we think before we do. So thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having me. And I'll see you again.